Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samba Sambuddhassa. The subject of the discourse today is the power of enduring patience. Now, in Dhammapada, you find the Gatha, a verse, where it is said, khanti paramang tapoti tikha nibbanang paramang vadanti buddha. Khanti paramang, enduring patience, is the very highest form of austerity, the highest form of spiritual life, tapo. And the highest spiritual attainment, says the Buddha, is Nibbana. Khanti, therefore, is path par excellence to Nibbana. The very best way by which you can arrive at the eternal peace and bliss of Nibbana. Now, this Gatha, a particular event that occurred in the life of the Buddha. So this Gatha was exemplified by that event, and I am going to relate that event to you. Now, Lord Buddha was staying at that time in Rajagaha, and one day, together with about 500 of his senior-most Arhat disciples, and some who were not Arhat also, he left Rajagaha on a preaching tour and walked towards Nalanda. The distance is about 12 to 15 miles from Rajagaha to Nalanda. At that time there was this famous highway that led towards Nalanda, which was a very famous city. So, as the Buddha traveled together with the retinue of monks, now a sectarian teacher who believed in self-mortification as a way of spiritual development or religious path. And his name was Supriya, and his chief disciple was Brahmadatta. He too, with a retinue of ascetics, some of them naked, some of them not naked, they were traveling along the same route, the same road, but behind the Buddha. As the Buddha and his monks walked, they were a little away from behind. They were also walking, traveling towards Nalanda. Now, Supriya somehow had a lot of hatred for Buddha, and so he went on abusing the Buddha, he spoke in dispraise and denigrating the Buddha, his teaching, and the holy order of saints, Sangha. Now, the monks who were behind, you see, they heard all this, but they just kept quiet because Buddha himself never reacted and just walked quietly towards Nalanda. And these people throughout, all the way from Rajagaha to Nalanda, about 15 miles, this Supriya did nothing but abuse, criticize, find fault, and dispraise and so on. And the Brahmadatta, as it would happen, Brahmadatta, his chief disciple, kept on contradicting him. He was more honest, so he said, no, sir, it's not like that, it is like this. And the whole thing was mostly, it was on this dogmatic belief in a hierarchical society called caste system. So, In the evening they reached Nalanda and they stayed there in the royal rest house, which was in the middle of a huge park, royal park. So the Buddha and his disciples went and settled down in one part of the rest house, and Supriya, together with his disciples, occupied another part of the rest house, and they could hear each other anyway. So Supriya continued throughout the night, evening and night, with his, diatribe against the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. The monks heard, they said nothing, because Buddha himself, he was impervious to all this. He just remained quiet and compassionate, said nothing, not reacted at all. Then, in the morning, when they got up early in the morning, the monks went there, and there was a huge well somewhere near the rest house. They washed their faces, etc. They drew water. And next to that was a pavilion, a public pavilion where people would gather. They will hear to discourses from monks and gurus and so on. So they all went there and sat down in that before going for morning alms round. So the Buddha, he was aware of all these, even before, he got up at about 4 o'clock and plunged into samadhi, called the samadhi of boundless compassion. And then emerging from that, he spread his all-knowing mind, or in the screen of his omniscient mind arose this gentleman, Supriya and Brahmadatta. And then he said, well, what is going to happen today? And he saw through all that is going to happen. So he went, and the monks are going to discuss. So here is an occasion where he gave one of his most famous discourses known as Brahmajala Sutta, the great net, the supreme all-embracing net of views and religious dogmas and beliefs and all that. How beings are caught in their beliefs, in their dogmas and views. So Buddha said, well, this is a good occasion, so I will now dilate on this great view, the net of views. So he went to the monks and said, well, what are you talking about? He of course knew. The monk said, well, we were discussing. We were wondering how this man could be so perverted as to keep on abusing the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha for nothing and all false accusations. And his disciple contradicting him all the time. And he started in Rajagaha, and when we arrived in Nalanda, it went on. In the night also it went on, and so on. So we were wondering how human mind can be so perverted. And the Buddha, we are thinking, oh, look at the master. He knew every bit of it. And he could, with his spiritual supernormal power, he could put him down in just, put him down. But he did nothing of that. He just endured. He was the very symbol of enduring patience. And forbearance and forgiveness. So we were discussing this, Lord. Then the Buddha said, Bhikkhus, now listen to me. If anybody were to abuse or speak in dispraise, falsely or whatever, against the Buddha, Tathagata, referring to himself, against his teaching, Dhamma and the Sangha, you should never react, you should never resent and be upset on account of that. On the contrary, you should look inwards and contemplate and find out whatever the person says, find out the truth behind. If you think that what he says is partially true or right, that those things obtain in us, then we should have the honesty and the goodness to go and say, yes, you are right, my friend, and thank you very much for showing me you are a great teacher. And thank him for that. But if you think that no, it is all false and absolutely baseless, then just be quiet, because it is baseless. In other words, you search for truth through that very event which is unpleasant and discover the truth underlying, you see, that particular event. You are committed to truth, experiencing truth, realizing truth, and that you should do, discover the truth through every event of life. That is what you should do. Similarly, monks, if anybody were to praise you up to the sky, oh, you are this, you are that, and all that, and you were to become, you see, you are full of jubilation and joy, and you get inflated by that, that will be equally, you see, detrimental to your spiritual progress. Just as if you react and become upset and resent and hate because somebody is criticizing, and in that all you do is you lay down a big obstacle which will hinder and act as an impediment, hinder your progress of the spiritual path. Instead, you contemplate, look inwards and find out the truth. And if you think that no, it is all wrong, then just forget about it and apply enduring patience. Then he says, enduring patience is the highest form of austerity and spiritual life. Apply that. And the same principle with reference to praises. That means transcend both hate and love, praise and dispraise, all dichotomies of life. Spiritually, worldly existence, if you have, you see, a very sharp mind and you are seeking to discover the truth behind every event of life, and you apply this, and you try to find out the truth behind everything, you will see that the world is governed by dichotomies, pairs of opposites. Where there is praise, there will also be dispraise. Where there is love, there will also be hate. So go beyond the scope of the world, because you are seeking Nibbana, seeking freedom from all suffering which comes from this course of dichotomies. Suffering is the result of being caught in between the two dichotomies of life. Love and hate, gain and loss, etc. So Buddha gave this, and then on another occasion he quoted as a bodhisattva how he was able to overcome all reaction and triumph over all the odds of life and go beyond, you see, all the dichotomies. He quoted, you see, this happened in Jetavana. A monk was very angry, he fought, he resented. His teacher or somebody had told him, and he just hit back, and he was intolerant, and he couldn't tolerate. So this monk was brought before the Lord, and the Buddha said, look here, you yourself are laying down a huge obstacle on your path by being resentful and by believing in revenge. Just vengefulness and resentment. That's not the way. the way is very different. The way is learn to forbear. If you exercise your forbearance, you will know how to endure and endure patiently. And when you are able to endure patiently, your forbearance, the level of forbearance goes up and it becomes, you see, forgiveness. Forgiveness is a powerful spiritual tool. Those who can forgive, they always triumph. Those who hit back, take revenge, they always lose. And this is proven even today in our day-to-day life. We see countries or cultures where people believe in revenge, in badlao. Hit back. That is their philosophy of life. And take to violence as the only way to solve problems. That's their outlook. So now we see this belief in violence and hitting back and vengefulness and revenge and resentment. Those who believe in that, they have created a society absolutely rife with violence all the time. Now what is happening today? You read newspapers and all that, I don't, but you know very well what is happening in Pakistan, for instance, our neighbor, or Afghanistan, our neighbor, or Iraq, Iran, and all these Middle Eastern countries. What is happening there? This belief in violence and vengefulness, badlao, revenge, hit back, that has brought immense suffering. Day and night, hundreds of people are dying there, just through mindless violence, because they believe in violence and they don't believe in enduring patience. They don't want to be patient. They don't believe in patience. So, the Buddha told this monk, look here, that's not the way. I will give you an example of when I was a Bodhisattva. In this very city, at that time he was known as Kundaka Kumara. He was born in a very, very rich and wealthy Brahmin family. The family which got a title, so that he was known as Kundaka Kumara. Kumara means a prince. It seems his father owned, 80 crores of gold coin and 80 crore worth of assets of all kinds. Movable, immovable, all kinds of assets. So he was born there, and he went through the best of education in Taxila University those days, and returned home as a young man, and then he got settled down as a grihastha, as a householder. Then suddenly his parents died, and his relatives and all that, lot of them died. So this death in the family brought in him a kind of a shock. He started wondering, what is all this? If life simply means it ends in death, what is the meaning of life? Why all this wealth? And then he said, look, my parents, his parents, all these people kept on acquiring, accumulating assets and properties and money and all this wealth. Now they died carrying nothing with them, just leaving everything empty-handed they went away. And I too am going to do this. If now that I have become the head of the estate, now I too will want to die, carrying nothing or none of these assets with me. So no, I am going to take to a different path, and I am going to carry these assets, or what these assets stand for, value, real value, true value, that I am going to carry with me. So he decided to live a life of renunciation. So before that he wanted to do that in a responsible manner. So he said, well, I will make an announcement and choose the right type of people who can use the asset in the right way and benefit from it. That is how he spent about a year or more in distributing all that he had and gave up everything. Then he donned the monastic robe and he went, before that he chose some from his cousins and all that. He said, you run the show here, I am off. So he went away to Himalaya and led a very strict ascetic life, living on the, wild fruits and all that, and all the time meditating. And one of his main subject of meditation was metta meditation, universal love, cultivating loving kindness and compassion. So he said, I am a believer of the divine states, and there are these 4 divine states: metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. Universal love, all-embracing compassion, sympathetic joy for the happiness of others, and equanimity, not being moved by any of the dichotomies of the world. So that is how he developed a tremendous patience and all that. During the rainy season, he couldn't live in the Himalaya because of tremendous cold and rain and all that. So he came back to Benares, to his old city, settled down in the Royal Park. It was a very huge park. Part of it was used for all kinds of pleasures and games and all that. Another part was just quiet and calm. There was a grove of sala trees. He went and settled down under one of these trees, and he was happy. He used to go once a day for his alms round, and he lived like that. One day he was passing through the house of the commander-in-chief, and he saw him, and he was so pleased. He went and invited him inside the house and gave him the dana and heard his dharma and so on. So that is how he was living. Now one day the king thought, well, I am going to enjoy my park. So he went with all his women folk, and then he chose one of his favorites and lay down on the stone couch over there in the park itself. So this lady, on her lap, he slept off. Then he was fully drunk and absolutely mad. So after a time he suddenly woke up and he said, oh, these ladies now, when they thought he had about more than 50 ladies, all his concubines. So they said, well, you see, and the dancers, he had asked the dancers to come and dance and entertain him and so on. So when he slept off, they all said, come on, let's have a round. You see, when he is not there, well, we don't need any entertainment anyway. So they went about and found this monk sitting under a tree. And they said, come on, let's hear a little Dhamma from him. So that is how these ladies sat down, and the Bodhisattva gave a discourse on the virtue and benefit of enduring patience. And is known as Khanti Jataka. Most inspiring, most uplifting Jataka story that anybody can read. It is the Jataka 313. Very wonderful story indeed. Those of you are interested, please go through. So here, as he was teaching, this drunken king got up suddenly and found that nobody was there. So he asked the favorite, hey, where are these women gone? And she said, well, they are just going about, they are hearing some Dhamma, I think, and all that. What? Dhamma? What is this Dhamma business? I am going to teach the lesson to that fellow who is giving Dhamma. So he went there, all enraged, went right in front of the monk and said, "Hey, what are you teaching?" He says, "Oh, Your Majesty, I was just, talking about the virtue and the value and the benefits of enduring patience." "Oh, so you believe in enduring patience, huh?" He said, "Yes, Your Lord, I do." He said, "Let me test. You are preaching, so whether you are practicing it, let me test it." And he asked one of his police, one of those jalhads, says, "Come on, beat him up, 200 lashes." So this guy went on hitting all over his body with a leash, with a powerful, dandam, and he was bleeding all over. So all the other people there, they were so mortified, but they were absolutely afraid of the king. He was a militant, dogmatic, dictatorial, mad monarch. So they dare not say anything. So he was beaten up thoroughly. Then he said, "Well, you still believe in patience?" He said, "Yes, Lord, we do." "Your Majesty?" "Yes, I do." Then he said, "Hey, cut off his legs and hands." And this fellow cut off both legs and hands. "Hey, you still believe?" He was bleeding profusely. He said, "My khanti, Your Majesty, my patience does not lie in those cut off limbs which are drenched with blood. No. That khanti dwells in my heart, and I wish you happiness, Your Lord. May you be happy." He said, "What? You still try to, you fake your this thing, huh?" Then he ordered him, he said, "Cut off his nose. Then cut off his ears." Torture after torture. And yet the Bodhisattva remained calm and patient and very forgiving indeed. So the king got so angry, he says, "Finish him off." And then, "You still believe in it?" "Yes." "Then where is your patience?" "It's in the heart, Majesty. It's in the heart." So he said, he just got up and gave a kick on his heart. He was lying, of course, flat on the ground, and then walked out with his women folk. As he was going near the gate of the park, suddenly the earth split, and he just fell into that split like a big earthquake, a very strong earthquake, and he was sucked into this split earth. And straight away he was reborn. He died and reborn in hell. Then and there he got the result. So powerful was the evil deed that he attracted only that kind of suffering. The result was that kind of suffering. Meanwhile, the commander-in-chief went there. He said, "Come here. Now the king has gone. Let's go and do something to the venerable monk." So he got water, he got lotion, he got all kinds of things and applied and washed him nicely and bandaged him and said, "Venerable sir, I seek pardon for all the people in this kingdom, for all the horrible things the king has done. Now please forgive the kingdom. Please don't curse anybody." He says, no question of cursing, Commander. May you all be happy. May there be peace. And then he passed away. So now this Khantivadi Jatak, you see story, he told this young monk, he said, "Hey, this is what happens if you are not patient, if you cannot endure suffering, or abusive words, or beating or any kind of ill treatment or injustice or whatever. If you can't do that, you have to pay a price, heavy price. So don't believe in resentment and revenge. The philosophy of revenge, hitting back, is absolutely perverted and brings nothing but unhappiness and sorrow. Now this khanti, the attitude, in the Buddhist world you can see. The Buddhists, wherever I went, when I first of all went to Ceylon after becoming a Buddhist monk, I was surprised by the amount of patience, by the amount of goodwill and friendliness among the people. And this I saw everywhere in Burma, Thailand, everywhere. So they consciously and deliberately practice endurance, forbearance, forbearing patience. Now patience or forbearing patience can be, applied in so many other ways with very different motivation. Now for instance, a office worker, he is troubled by his officer, who is a bully. And he has to be very patient. Yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. But he is not practicing patience out of love or out of any high philosophy. He says, if I say anything, I will lose my job. So out of fear he uses patience. Or in the family, you fight husband and wife and all that. They have some vested interest, each one. Therefore they have to apply patience. Or elsewhere in 100 different ways you see people do practice patience. But what is the motivation behind? There lies the secret. So as one believing in the philosophy of non-violence and non-reaction, patience and enduring suffering, you see, this pays. Now here in India, for instance, hundreds of temples were all taken away by sectarians and turned into their own temples. Buddhists never went and fought, and they never complained, they never went and said, come on, a movement and burn their temple and this and that, as it happened in Ayodhya. Buddhists never did that. The result, the Dhamma has come back again. Hundreds of monks were put on stakes in South India, in Madurai. They never thought of any revenge or anything. So it pays. History also shows that ultimately enduring patience, that is the one thing that will triumph. It is hard, it's not easy. But Nibbana, if you have Nibbana, spiritual freedom, the goal of your life, you have to invite hardship. There is no other goal. But it is a kind of hardship worthwhile passing, because once you undergo, you practice enduring patience consciously and deliver it as a mode or as a philosophy of life, not as a reaction, not with any other worldly motive. Then this patience pays, and it is very pleasing indeed. It brings so much of joy at heart. You feel triumphant every time you are patient. With this I conclude. May the blessings of Bhagavan Buddha, his teaching and Dhamma and Sangha surround your lives with abundant enduring patience. With abundant metta, may you all be happy and well.